ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 3 of the series What If Deku Was Abandoned in the Woods and Became a Monster. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Izuku went to check on where Kirishima was thrown out the window, but he looked fine as he was dusting himself off. "You okay?" Izuku shouted down at him. Kirishima looked up and gave a thumbs up with a toothy smile. "All good. Nice job taking out Sato, too. Thanks. What are you doing with your hand?" Izuku jumped out the window and landed with a loud thump. Kirishima gave a softer smile and explained, "It's a thumbs up, meaning all good or good job or something along those lines. Thumbs down is the opposite." "Huh, neat. Thanks, Kirishima." The two joined up with the other two and made their way to the viewing room. "Man, Izuku, you're scary in there," Hagakure said. "How did you know I was there?" "You were very quiet, but my sense of smell was able to tell your general location. These pits next to my nose were what made me see you." "What are they?" Hagakure squinted to see. "Pit organs, like on snakes. They can sense heat very well, and I've improved them some. When I first saw you, I wanted something to actually see you. So I researched after class and got these to work properly." The invisible girl marveled at the boy before her. "That's so cool. What other cool things like that can you do?" "I've got lots of things changed in my body. Bones are reinforced with iron and carbon. Muscles are compressed, ligaments strengthened, and nerves extended." His hand shifted to show the bones on his knuckles and then the densely packed mass in his forearms. "So you completely overhauled your entire body?" Sato asked with disbelief. "Yep. Except for my skin, I like how it is. And hair, not much use there." They walked into the room and were greeted by the rest of the class crowding the floor. Some tried to give words of encouragement to the losing team, but Sato brushed them off. "Nah, we didn't stand a chance against Izuku." Hagakure nodded, but no one saw except Izuku. "Yeah, he's super scary when he caught me." Shinso snorted. "He was scary because it was dark and he got the jump on you. When you do see him for real, you'll wet your pants." "I know I did." "Zuku, show us what he is talking about." Mina all but demanded. "All right. No, I want it to be the right time." Shinso stopped his friend from doing anything more than his claws shifting. All Might coughed to get everyone's attention. "Now, who wants to tell me how they did?" For both teams. He motioned for Yaoyorozu to speak, who raised her hand. "I believe that they all did well in the beginning. While Kiyama, Izuku is fine." The feral boy interrupted his classmate with a smile. While Izuku was a wild card, it was a good attempt to have Hagakure try to sneak past them and to the objective. Everyone played their part until the very end. Izuku should have assisted his partner with Sato, but instead, let them fight, resulting in his counterpart being indisposed if Izuku couldn't handle Sato alone. "I just wanted Kirishima to have a chance to fight is all." Izuku shrugged in defense. "Plus, I stood no chance against him. I don't think I could stand a change, even with a pound of sugar in my system." Sato supposed Izuku. "I remember sugar," Izuku said wistfully to himself. Many pairs of eyes snapped at him. Mina giggled excitedly, and Shinso made a keening sound wishing his friend never said anything. "Very good, young Yaoyorozu. I think that covers it, the MVP of this round." Everyone pointed at Izuku, who was daydreaming of sweets. They moved on to the next match with Kaken on the hero's side with Shoji. Koji and Tsuyu were on the villain's team. Izuku excitedly watched his old friend use his quirk to see how far he had grown. Shoji scouted them out as Koji did the same with birds. "That guy can control animals?" Izuku asked. "Koji Koda. No, he can speak to them and asks for help." All Might explained. "Huh, how does that work with people who have animal-based quirks?" He was tempted to get the bird-headed team to experiment or the frog-looking one. "You're weird," Shinso said to his friend, and Izuku made a face back. The match started and Kaken blasted up to the top of the building while Shoji worked his way up. On the inside, Tsuyu and Koji set up a defense in the third-floor room. They didn't last as Kaken found them first, and then Shoji joined as Koji went down. Tsuyu tried to escape with the bomb, but Shoji grappled her, and the hero team won. That's how the rest of the day went, with everyone getting a chance to go and play heroes versus villains. Izuku found it very fun to watch everyone try different strategies and combinations with their quirks. Shinso's turn was the funnies for Izuku as Shiro wrapped his friend up, but ended up under Shinso's quirk and ordered Shiro to wrap himself up. The two ended up wrapped in tape as Kaminari dumbly walked around, while Jiru stood on shaking legs because of the shock Kaminari sent everywhere. The villains won that round, and they needed to be helped back to the viewing room since no one was able to stand. Shinso blushed when he was met with Izuku's snort. Everyone got to go, and the day ended with All Might disappearing from view after a farewell. Everyone looked around to see where he went, but Izuku pointed in a direction, and everyone saw a door finish closing. They animatedly returned to the locker room to change, and then head home. "What are you doing after school?" Shinso asked his friend. "Oh, do you remember my mother was arrested for leaving me in the woods? Yeah, her trial is today after school, and I'm going." Everyone quieted in the locker room, and Shinso slapped him but winced when his hand connected with Izuku's arm. "Why didn't you say anything?" Izuku shrugged. "I didn't think it was a big deal. Is it a big deal?" "I mean, it's a big deal for me, but..." Shinso sighed and shook his head. "It's complicated, don't worry about it." Everyone finished changing and funneled out to leave through the gates. Mina and Jiru waited for their friends, but only Shinso and Shoji came out. When they explained why they were shocked, but then understood why Izuku wanted to keep the trail to himself. "Oh no, Shinso said. He just didn't think it was a big deal to anyone. He didn't care if anyone knew. He just didn't mention it." He corrected their misunderstanding. Mina looked incredulous ahead and then slowly nodded. "You know what? That checks out with him." "You think he'll be fine?" Jiru asked Shinso. "I'm not sure, I hope so." He responded. "These clothes suck." Izuku tugged on the collar of the white button-up shirt. Namuri batted his hand away and fixed his collar. "You'll be fine, just don't mess with it. Come on, let's go before we are late." The two walked out of the school into the parking lot. They took the same car as last time and got moving. The courthouse wasn't anything special, but it was their destination. Heroes were prevalent in the area, and police were more so. Izuku looked around as Namuri guided them through the doors, and then to a checkpoint. "Please remove any personal objects and step through the scanner," a security guard said to the two of them. Namuri handed him her hero license. He nodded and handed it back to her. "You will still need to go through the security scanner." He pointed at Izuku. "All right, where do I put these?" Izuku shrugged and flesh tore as the communication device Nizu gave him, and his key was produced. Namuri gave him a really look as the security guard held a bin, and he stepped through the arch. It immediately beeped, and the security guard pulled him to the side. He scanned him with a handheld scanner, and it rang immediately as well. "Young man, do you have any metal on you?" "Yeah. My whole skeletal structure is near steel." Izuku tilted his head in confusion. "You could have told us and skipped this part," the man said with a raised eyebrow. "Well, you didn't ask." Izuku shrugged defensively. "Izuku, it's so no weapons enter the building," Namuri explained from the other side. "That doesn't make any sense. Some people are weapons. I can make my body a weapon." He tried to understand the logic of it. The security guard huffed and gave his stuff back. The feral boy put his stuff back into his arms and followed Namuri. They walked until she stopped in front of a big set of double doors. She checked her watch and nodded. She opened the door and motioned Izuku to go in, and she followed while closing the door gently. Inside, a few people were sitting on the benches. One caught his eye, Asato. "Asato, it's good to see you again." Izuku greeted her. She approached him and gave him a quick embrace. "You look well. I've missed seeing you at your table." She ruffled his messy top. "How has UA been treating you?" Izuku beamed at the contact. "Good. The forest is smaller there, but nice. I've made my den instead of taking one like last time." Asato smiled softly at him and then turned sharply at Namuri. "You've been sleeping in the woods?" Her eyes narrowed slightly at the younger woman before her. "Yeah. It's next time this big tree and pond. I did sleep in my room once, but that was by accident. My room is nice, I guess. I don't have much to compare it to." He shrugged. Namuri wiped the bead of sweat from her forehead as the librarian's eyes softened again and turned back to him. "That's wonderful, dear." People began to file into the courtroom in fancy suits. Namuri and Asato guided Izuku to the seats nearest the front. The judges got prepared for the day and got seated. A few more people walked into the courtroom from where Izuku entered. Many he didn't know, but the last three he did. Kaken lead the way in a button-up with a man and woman he hadn't seen in over 10 years. Kaken met Izuku's eyes, and he pulled his parents to him. Mitsuki spotted him and gasped. Her eyes immediately began to tear, and she covered her mouth. Masaru was in a similar state, but more reserved. Izuku tentatively got up to meet them. Mitsuki didn't wait much longer and yanked Izuku into a hug. She held him tight as Masaru placed his hand on his shoulder. "You're here, look at you." She pulled him back and examined his face. "You look just like I remember." She laughed softly with tears running down her face. He didn't get to talk before a gavel hit the block, and everyone rose. The Bakugos moved into the seats behind him, and the session began. The judges began by bringing out the subject of today. Inko Midnight was walked in by a security guard with quirk suppression cuffs on her. She was lean with long green hair loose around her head. She appeared calm until she met eyes with her son. Her eyes widened when she realized the boy he had left for dead survived. When they told her why she was arrested, she didn't believe Izuku had survived in the wild. So she was calm, sure that whoever they claimed Izuku, he was a fake. But she couldn't refuse that the boy in front of Mitsuki was him. The judges began the trial as they were handed files. One judge read the charges against Inko, and the others shuffled through their papers to see the evidence placed forth. Izuku saw their wrinkled faces grow more wrinkled as they read the reports with growing frowns. The final judge finished reading and took off his glasses to rub his eyes. "Let the trial for Inko Midoriya begin. Miss Midoriya, you are guilty of child abandonment and attempted first-degree murder of Izuku Midoriya, your son. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" She was pale, a sweating mess, and didn't say anything. "I believe this case is very clear with the evidence provided and the statement of Izuku by Detective Tsukauchi. Do you agree?" The one judge asked the other two. One nodded, and the other hesitated. "I wish to hear from both sides before I make my decision." The middle-aged judge decided. The other two gave their nods and motioned to go ahead. "May Izuku Midoriya please come to the stand?" "Just Izuku is fine." He stood and smiled at the three judges. He shuffled out of the chairs and walked where the security guard pointed. The oldest of the judges smiled softly at Izuku. "Very well, Izuku. We have read the statement given to us by the good detective. Would you please tell us everything you remember in detail?" Izuku let out a breath and began his story again. "Well, I was 5, and the last thing my mother said to me was, 'This wouldn't have happened if you have gotten your quirk,' and then she put something over my mouth. I woke up in the middle of the woods, alone." From there he continued his whole story from having to eat raw fish to killing the wolf when he was around 7. He described the fight and the discovery of his quirk. He continued until he caught up to current events. "And now I'm here, I think that's it." There was a sniffle from the seated area, and he could tell it was from Mitsuki. The whole courtroom was dead quiet as they listened attentively to his story. When he finished, there was a pause, and then the same old judge spoke. "Thank you, Izuku. You can return to your seat. Miss Midoriya, to the stand." The tone in his voice was different for the last part. Izuku sat down and watched as security clipped her handcuffs to the stand. She stared down at the podium. "Please, tell us your side of the story." The middle-aged judge asked of her. "I had no choice. He was quirkless. It would have ruined my whole life. I've read enough to know what I did was a mercy compared to what he would have to live through." She burst out. Izuku felt anger boil when she spoke. Thankfully, Mitsuki said anything before he did. "You had a choice, but you chose one of the worst ones. How could you?" Tears leaked out and her face was red from anger on his behalf. A gavel hammered down. "The audience will be quiet during this session," one judge said seriously. Mitsuki bowed slightly and sat back down. The three turned back to Inko. "Is that all you have to say for yourself?" When there was no response, they continued. "Very well. Inko Midoriya, you are sentenced to serve 40 years with no parole. This court is adjourned." The final gavel stuck, and the security guard pulled Inko to the door she entered through. "Mitsuki, Katsuki, I'm sorry." She yelled back at the family with tears. They didn't respond, and instead turned their backs on her. That was the last thing she saw as the door closed with finality. Mitsuki sat with her face covered and her elbows on her knees. From hearing Izuku's story from start to finish and hearing her once closest friend admit to everything he had said caused Mitsuki to have a small breakdown. Masaru sat next to her with his arm around his wife. Katsuki had already heard the story once, but the way Inko admitted to it, he didn't know what to think of the woman who helped raise him. Namiri kept an eye on Izuku as he was lost in thought. She had no idea how he would react to all of what happened. Izuku, are you all right? She gently placed a hand on his arm. I feel tired, I think. That is called an emotional drain. Your body is fine, but your mind had had enough for today and is telling you to rest or stop doing what you were doing. Asato explained. Izuku nodded in understanding. Mitsuki wiped her face clean and turned to her nephew. I wanted to have you over for dinner and get to know you again, but I don't think today is a good day for that. He nodded again. Yeah, all right. She got up and pulled him into a hug again. She squeezed him, but for Izuku it felt nice. I'm so happy to see you again. She pulled back and held his face. I'll have Katsuki tell you when you should come over. After another hug, they began to leave. Masaru put his hand on his shoulder and gave him a warm smile as he passed. Kaken gave him a nod and followed his parents. Let's get back to UA, huh? Namiri put an arm around his shoulder and held him. He nodded, and the three made their way out. Once they got to the outside, Asato spoke. Take care of yourself. Come to me if you ever want to talk, or even visit. She gave him a hug and a smile. Namiri and Izuku got back to UA with no issues. She tried to talk to him on the way, but it was obvious that he just wanted to rest, so she left him to be with some instrumental music on the radio. Izuku, if you ever need to talk to someone about what you are feeling, please come to me, or get someone else to talk about it if you like. It's okay to feel angry or sad, all right? She knelt to look up at him. I think I'm okay. I felt angry and a little sad, but I just feel like I want to sleep for a while. Thank you, Namiri. For the first time, he hugged her, and she immediately reciprocated. Namiri watched Izuku walk out of his room after changing and heading out to the woods. He walked and slowly began to build up speed until he was sprinting faster than any normal person could. He disappeared into the woods and didn't slow down. Izuku's mind was tired, but his body wasn't, and he needed to burn some excess energy he had. So he went for a hunt and then tried to sleep early. He found a deer, and it was speared through its neck and out the bottom. It died quickly, and Izuku ate until he was full. He mechanically set the skin to dry after prepping it. The feral boy climbed into his den and lay down. Soon he slipped into sleep, and he dreamed of a nicer time. Izuku sat at his desk, waiting for class to begin. He wasn't the first one to be in class. Yaoruzo was the first. He gave her a wave when he entered. It wasn't long before more of his classmates started to fill up the classroom. Shinso was one of his first friends to arrive. He sat behind Izuku and poked him. How are you doing? How'd it go yesterday? He began. Now, I feel a bit tired, I guess. Yesterday, Asato said I was emotionally drained after court ended. I got to meet my Aunt Mitsuki, so that was nice. Inko was sentenced to 40 years in prison. I'm not sure if that's a lot or not. Like, was it too much or the right amount? Either way, I'm okay with her being gone. Oh, that's good to hear, Shinso said, not knowing what else to say after that. Thankfully, Mina arrived with a smile with Jairu on her heels. Morning, Izuku. Shin, you excited for another day? Izuku returned the smile to her. I suppose, this is still all new to me, so. He shrugged. Yeah, that makes sense, Jairu added. Well, if you ever need help, I don't mind giving you some after-school one-on-one tutoring, Mina said to him while leaning forward to him. Tutoring is when someone helps someone else with school, right? When Shinso nodded, he turned back to Mina. Thanks, Mina. I'm all right with schoolwork, but I will ask you about stuff I don't understand. I'd be happy to have one-on-one time with you after school. I can even show you my den if you like. He beamed at his helpful friend. Mina was pouting when her teasing didn't work again, but was now blushing when he finished. Ah, sure. Jairu snickered behind her. What's wrong, Mina? Something backfires? You okay, Mina? Your face is dark purple. He asked worriedly. It's fine, it's fine. She waved his concerns away. He turned to Shinso, who was smiling just as much as Jairu was. I feel like I'm missing something. Is this what Nim was talking about, girls being weird? Jairu snorted loudly and covered her mouth with her hands, and then her face turned red from being the center of attention for the moment. Even if Izuku didn't keep his voice down, she would have been able to hear them easily. Shinso, on the other hand, made a thinking pose and stared at his first friend in a while. Mina missed it all since she was still trying to recover from before. Shinso had had his suspicions since they went out to eat, but now he had to ask. Izuku, has anyone given you the talk? About guys and girls? Oh, Nim did. Last month. Why? Izuku tilted his head as to why his friend was bringing that up. To your seats. Aizawa walked through the door just as Shinso was beginning to speak again. Shoji had arrived a minute before Aizawa and was trying to understand what had happened in his group of friends. We have a few things to go over. Yesterday's trials. Everyone did well, Shinso. His eyes landed on the purple-haired boy who was trying to get his mind back on track from Izuku's statement that Midnight had given him the talk. Work on how the details of your command when you use your quirk. Yes, sir. Aizawa continued to tell some what they did wrong and improve. Now, you all will have to decide on your class president. Do it however you like. He went to lie down and take a nap. The class erupted in arguments, but Izuku turned around to Shinso to ask. His friend already predicted the question and spoke before he did. It's like the president is in charge after any teacher is. Make sure we are all present for an assembly, that sort of stuff. Izuku gave him a grateful smile. We shall put it to a vote. Ida declared, and they began to hand out paper to write a name. Izuku had no idea who to vote for and didn't truly care for the position. So for fun, he wrote his name in chicken scratch handwriting. He put his vote in Ida's hand as he passed back around to collect. He and Yaoruzo tallied the votes per name on the whiteboard, and his name was written with one vote. Izuku huffed a laugh, and then another vote was placed by his name, and then another. He heard and saw Mina cover her mouth to stifle a laugh as she saw what he was looking at. All right, Izuku is the president and Yaoruzo is the vice president. Ida said hesitantly, who the hell voted for the feral boy in our class, who might I add just asked me what class president was not 5 minutes ago? Shinso said to everyone. Mina burst out laughing, and a few chuckles were scattered around. Yaoruzo motioned Izuku to stand beside her, and he heard her whisper, give a speech. He got what a speech was by context clues. I will beat any other class president in combat, I promise you all. I will protect you. I don't know what the duties of the president are. He waved his hand at the board. Mina laughed even harder, and most of the class began to get infectious giggles. Shinso dropped his head on his desk and had given up. Jiraiya gave him a thumbs up for encouragement. Shoji just gave him a shrug when Izuku looked at him for help. Feral president. A cheer went up starting with Kaminari. It spread quickly, and it caused Aizawa to wake and rise like the living dead. He looked at the board and then at the rest of the class. Izuku is class president until the end of the year or for special circumstances. He drove the final nail into the coffin for everyone. Sit down, the class is beginning soon. He gestured for the two to sit down. Izuku sat as Kaken sent him an amused look, and Shinso Mock glared at him. You voted for yourself, didn't you? I didn't think I was going to get the position. He whispered, yelled back to his friend. The door opened, and Cementos walked in with a calm smile. The day progressed like normal until lunch came, and everyone got up to leave. Izuku stretched, and his back cracked multiple times. Anyone in hearing range cringed at the sound, but Izuku didn't notice. He began to head to the door, and Shinso followed. Mina, Jiraiya, and Shoji joined them and began to make their way to the cafeteria. I'll see you guys later. Izuku was about to split off to hunt, but an arm hooked around his and pulled him back. Nah, you're coming with us to eat. Mina struggled to pull him along due to his compact weight. Yeah, it'll do you good. Jiraiya agreed. Izuku shrugged and went along with his friends. All right, do they have sandwiches? I still don't know how to use utensils. Mina laughed in remembrance of the first day. Don't worry, I'll teach you how to use the eating sticks. She skipped along. All right, let's go. Izuku agreed with the pink girl, and the other three gave each other significant looks. Jiraiya pulled the other two back and whispered, does Izuku know Mina is trying to tease him and doesn't care, or does he not know? I believe he doesn't know or understand what she is trying to do, Shoji whispered back. He doesn't. He said that Midnight gave him the talk just last month. I was one of the first people to talk to him after years alone in the woods. He doesn't understand anything to do with the opposite gender other than what goes on with them. It's all completely new to him. Shinso explained with a sigh. While he does enjoy having Izuku as a friend, it does cause drama like this. He is beginning to like it as well. Oh, that's some funny stuff right there. Jiraiya smiled. I want to see how far Mina is willing to go until she finds out what we did. They lined up at the lunch line, and Izuku copied Mina, who was in front of him. She ordered something he didn't know, and then it was his turn. Izuku, nice to see you. What would you like? Lunch Rush asked. They have met in passing, and he knows of his past, but that was it. Can I have something that doesn't require utensils to eat? Some people shot him curious looks, but Izuku never noticed. Of course, boyo. A foot-long sandwich filled with everything needed for a daily diet. When he set it on his tray, it weighed at least 2 pounds. There we are, enjoy. Izuku's mouth watered some just at the odor of the meal before him. He grabbed water to drink and followed Mina to a table. He looked skeptically at the chairs but tried to sit. It creaked ever so slightly, but held. What in God's name is that? Jairu asked at the biggest sandwich she had seen. Izuku's hand split, and he sliced it in half and picked it up to eat. He chewed slowly and savored every inch. It's good, he said around a mouthful. So, class president, what is your first decree in office? Mina joked. I can make decrees? He asked. No. You just make sure the class doesn't have any issues that you could fix for the teacher, or just make sure the class is in order. Shinso shot whatever was brewing in his head. A problem solver? I can do that. He nodded as tendrils extended with eyes and scanned the lunchroom for problems. Izuku, may I ask for advice on non-human body parts one could mimic like yourself? Shoji asked. All the tendrils turned with a flash towards Shoji and his eyes sparkled. Of course. What do you want to know? The first thing I was to compact my whole musculature system and continuously added muscles every day. It's simple, and all you need to do is eat enough to do so. Although Izuku hummed in thought. What is it? Shoji asked. I was thinking if you could eat whatever and convert what you need to the right things. I can do that because I can tell my body to do what I want. Convert fat cells to protein or whatever I need at the time. It does take energy, but that's why I eat so much. He rattled off. The other three listened to their conversation as they ate. I can only control my arms. I will need to eat the proper things if I wish to attempt what you speak of. For now, can you show me how to do something small? All right. Can you expose your bones? Izuku showed by example and held his hand out. Flesh pulled back and his knuckles were exposed. Izuku, we are eating. Mina complained. He tilted his head in confusion. I can see that. Before Mina could say anything, an alarm blared and Jairu cried in pain. Izuku did the same, but he could shift his ears. Everything got muted and he leaped to his feet to fight. He scanned the whole area in a second and decided on helping the closest person he could. Bone spears were thrown at Mach speed and accurately destroyed the alarms that caused his friend pain. 7 alarms were destroyed in a few seconds. The panic in the crowd wasn't calming much as everyone tried to leave through one double door. He could see people getting pushed around and some knocked down. The flesh on his arms tore and moved with his bone as they extended, and he moved. He leapt to the wall and dug his claws into the surface. He leapt from one wall to another with blinding speed until he was above the exit. Enough. His voice shifted halfway, and everyone froze as Izuku hung over them. His voice shifted back to normal as he had everyone's attention. Leave without hurting anyone. Now go. He's right. We should be rational about this and leave in an orderly manner. Ida chopped. Someone pointed out the window and said, It's only the media. Yes, it's only the media, whoever that is. Izuku trailed off, and he sniffed the air again. His head whipped in a direction, and he crawled upside down through the doors and began to track the scent. Everyone watched him curiously, and he ran off. He arrived at a door and swung it open. No one was in there, and he cautiously stepped into the teacher's lounge where he had been numerous times before. He could smell someone unfamiliar in the room and then vanished. The scent was stronger in one area around a desk. It smelled of vital fluid and ash. His arm vibrated, and he pulled out the communication device Nizu gave him. Izuku, is everything all right? Nizu had seen what happened in the cafeteria and followed the boy through the cameras to where he is now. I picked up the scent of someone unfamiliar to me in the teacher lounge. It's strong around one desk, and then it's gone. It smells of ash and something else. Izuku explained. His tendrils were out and scanning everything around him just in case. Nizu paused and then spoke. No one was in the room. Empty. I'll have Namuri come to you. Good job calming the students in the cafeteria. With that, the device shut off. Izuku felt warm inside at the praise. Namuri jogged into the room and greeted Izuku. Is this the desk? She asked when she stood next to him. He nodded. She sifted through it but didn't know what they were looking for. It's All Might's desk. We'll have him check to see if anything is missing. She patted Izuku's head warmly. Nice job finding out about this. Izuku beamed up at her and remembered. Oh, Nem. When you said girls are weird, does that include them getting red in the face or purple in this case? He tilted his head in question. Midnight smiled widely at that. Purple, you say? Ashido, huh? She pulled Izuku to sit down on the sofa. People can get red in the face, or purple in her case, when they get embarrassed, flustered, or angry. What happened? She tried to pry the tea out of him with complete success. She wanted to help with stuff I didn't understand and said to have one-on-one time together after school. When I said that I could show her my den, she got purple-faced. Could I have gotten her angry? He worried. She chucked softly. Tell me this, what did she do after? That will help you understand better. Did she turn around and stomp off? Did she hide her face? Or did she begin to stutter and stumble her words? Oh, she hid her face. What is that? Embarrassed, then. Don't worry, you didn't do anything wrong. It happened to some when they interpret things in a certain way. I understand, I think. He shrugged. Thanks for the help. He got up to leave. Come to me any time for this kind of help. She called after him. Izuku swung back to the cafeteria and reclaimed the javelin he threw. Then he arrived back at Class 1A, and they were chatting among themselves until he walked in. Many shouted his name and began to talk all at once. He nodded along at the mess of words until they stopped. I understood none of that. Mina barked out a laugh. That was seriously cool. You were super fast. Can you do the voice thing again? Destruction of school property is against the rules. Ida chopped his arms. Izuku shrugged at him. Things can get fixed. She was hurting because of the sound. He gestured to Jairu. Thanks for that, by the way, she said gratefully. Aizawa walked in at that time, and everyone quieted down. Classes are cut short by the intruders. Go home, or whatever. He waved at them and left. Noise. Short day, Kaminari said and packed his bag. Everyone followed suit. Mina walked up to them since they sit closer together. Zuku, you said you would show us your den? Can you? Of course. Izuku happily agreed. I'm down. Jairu shrugged and Shoji gave a nod of agreement. Shinso didn't have to say anything and followed his friends. Izuku led them to his room for a change and headed out the door to the woods. Mina, being the most nosy, peeked into his room, but it was very bare bones. They walked and talked to the tree line. Right. Why did you run off after calming everyone down? Mina asked. Izuku explained the odor he caught, and then how he told Nizu about it. It was weird. It was there, then it was gone the next moment. That is concerning. I am sure the faculty will take care of it, Shoji said, and the rest agreed. They walked for a bit longer, following Izuku until they walked into a clearing with a large pond in the middle with a large tree to the other side. 3 claw marks were carved out on the tree. The 3 were in awe at the peaceful area. Where's your den? Mina asked in curiosity. Izuku led them to the tree and picked up his door. Here it is, want to see inside? Mina looked apprehensively at the dimly lit hole in the ground. Yo, you first. She nudged the thinner girl. Big baby. Jaira shot back and leaned in. There's a root you can use for a handhold, Shinso called out as he sat down on a log to do some homework. Thanks. She slipped in and Mina peered inside with little success. Oh, Izuku? Yep. Why do you have a wall of animal skulls? She didn't sound scared but casual about it. Oh, let me show you. Izuku dove into his den without any issues. Jaira was looking at them with interest. He grabbed one and brought it to the entrance for Mina and Shoji to see it as well. This is the wolf that tried to kill me. You can see where I stabbed its eye here. He showed the cracked eye socket. Mina picked it up gingerly and examined it with Shoji. It's a trophy, she realized. Yes, most are, others are just days to remember. He grabbed a perfectly preserved badger skull. This was Shinso's first meal with me. Jairu held it and smiled softly at the implications. This was his way to take pictures or something similar. She looked at the robot heads from the entrance exam as her theory was proven correct. What about this one? She picked up the deer skull with a large set of antlers. That one just looked nice. He smiled. They nodded their agreement, and Mina slipped down into the den to see how her friend liked to sleep. She padded over to the furs and sat down. Izuku beamed at them and crawled up the hole. Shoji peeked in without having to crawl inside. Pretty bold of you to sit down on a boy's bed. Jairu smirked at Mina, trying the furs. She blushed and sat up. It looked comfortable, and I wanted to try it. It is pretty nice and warm. She ran her hand through the stack of furs. Jairu continued to look at Izuku's trophies and picked up a makeshift obsidian knife. The hilt was wrapped up in old clothes that were worn out. She could see it was a shirt that was used as a handle. Jairu sniffed and wiped a tear at the thought of a child having to survive as Izuku did. Mina came over and saw what she was holding and why she was crying slightly. She gently grabbed it from her hands and looked at the tool that saved Izuku's life. Mina could make out the shape of the child-sized shirt wrapped around the end. I hope she rots in prison, Mina said softly. Me too, Jairu agreed. She caught the odor of something and sniffed again. Is that meat? They peeked out of the den to see Izuku roasting multiple legs of deer for everyone. Shoji helped by rotating 2 legs. 2 racks of ribs surrounded the opposite side of the fire. Izuku saw them emerge and gave them a beaming smile and motioned them to 2 freshly cut logs for them to sit. Mina sat down next to him and bumped shoulders playfully with him and helped him turn 1 leg of deer. Jairu saw the freshly cleaned deer skull to the side of the tree and smiled at what that meant. They chatted as they cooked the meal Izuku caught for them. They laughed and enjoyed their time in each other's company. Only Shinso grumbled about the lack of seasoning. Everyone grouped up in front of the bus and waited for Aizawa to show up. The day's classes passed by without anything of note, and now it was their hero class with rescue being the subject of the day. Shinso tapped Izuku's arm for attention. This is where the class president makes sure all of his class is here for the teacher. He whispered to his friend. Oh. Izuku makes his way around everyone in a flash and has many curious looks as he counts every head there. How many of us are in the class? He counted 19. There's 20 in our class, Shinso said. No one is left behind then. Izuku beamed. Mina giggled at his attitude. See, I knew I voted right. Line up in 2 rows in the order of your student number. Ida blew a whistle. What's he doing? Izuku asked his group of friends. Your job, I think. Jairu snorted. Oh, thanks for doing my job, Ida. Izuku didn't know his word was passive-aggressive as Ida blushed slightly and walked back to the group. Why he'd stop? Before his friends could explain, Aizawa walked up to the bus and opened the door. Come on, get on. Once everyone boarded, Izuku sat between Jairu and Mina. Shoji was in the back with Shinso, who was nodding off. Everyone chatted between themselves until Tsu asked Izuku something that caught everyone's curiosity. Izuku, may I ask why your quirk affects me and Tokoyami like it did, even though your quirk isn't animalistic? She didn't look directly at his face, but at his chest. Yeah, I've seen some others in the cafeteria with animal quirks sit far away from you, Kirishima noted. Izuku hummed in thought. I don't know, what does it feel like? He looked at both Tokoyami and Tsu. An eldritch being is watching me closely to see if I take a wrong step. If I did, then my light would be snuffed out. Tokoyami waxed poetry. Izuku stared at him, and Tokoyami began to get uncomfortable. I understood the words, but not the meaning. He turned to the frog girl. She gave out a ribbit of laughter and said, It was like a predator had their teeth around my neck, and if I moved wrong, I would be dead. You are not the first to make me feel like this. I have a friend with a snake quirk, but I have gotten used to her presence. You are different, and you don't even have an animal-based quirk. I have no idea. I mean, I copy some things from animals. He wiggled his paws on his legs for emphasis. But I've never done anything with pheromones since I had no use for them. He shrugged. Shinso snorted and jabbed. You've been raised by wolves for too long, he said to Izuku. Izuku furrowed his brow. They didn't raise me. They tried to eat me. I thought you knew that. Mina covered her mouth in a laugh, and Jairu smirked. He might have a point, too wild for too long, and you get the presence of a predator. Jairu agreed. I agree with what Jairu said, but I want to go back a bit. Kaminari raised his hands to pause. Izuku, do you know the meaning of being raised by wolves? As a saying, I mean. He paused and thought about it. It means you have wolf parents? He guessed. He's been in the wild for 10-odd years. Of course, he wouldn't know idioms. Jairu defended his friend. Kaminari rubbed his hands and smiled in glee. I have so much to teach you. Kaken slapped the back of his head. Don't teach, Izuku weird. Kaken, you shouldn't say bad words. Kaken looked put upon as the rest of the class found out Izuku didn't know curse words either. Before anyone could begin to teach Izuku anything that would cause Namuri to go on a crusade, they arrived. A big dome structure was in front of them with big letters saying USJ, United States Japan. Izuku tilted his head. Universal Studio Japan. Kaminari said right after. There was laughter from a hero waiting for them to arrive. Welcome to the USJ. 13 greeted everyone, unloading off the bus. Hey, 13. Izuku waved. She passed by him to talk to Aizawa and patted his head with her gloved hand. Hey there, Izuku. I'm happy to have you here. Her eyes on her helmet crinkled with a smile. Izuku could hear what they were talking about. It was nice to know that All Might couldn't be All Might all the time. 13 came back to the front of the class and began to speak about learning to use their quirks to save people. They walked in, and Izuku saw the interior of the USJ. He was front and center to admire everything around him, from the giant domed ceiling to the different zones. He even saw a wooden area and got excited. Shame he couldn't smell any prey. He was distracted by the lights of the USJ flickering and then going out. Then he sniffed the air and whipped his head to the center of the plaza. The same smell as yesterday is here. Just as a purple mist appeared and a man with hands on his body emerged. "Get back!" Aizawa yelled and pulled his goggles on. "Kaminari, call the main building. Evacuate the USJ now." "Are those villains?" Izuku asked. "Yes, and we are leaving." Shinso tried to drag Izuku back, but watched as Aizawa leapt off the stairs into the mob of intruders. "Shouldn't we help?" Izuku followed his friend, pulling his arm. "It's too dangerous. I must get you all to safety." 13 yelled back, and then the purple mist appeared in front of them, blocking the exit. "Apologies, we are the League of Villains. We are here for—" He was cut off as a bone javelin almost impaled his neck brace. Instead, he was able to move slightly enough for it to punch through the edge of it. The javelin punched into the wall behind. The villain felt vital fluid trickle down his neck in drops. He didn't have any time to see who threw it, as Izuku was right behind the javelin as he threw it. He tried to reach out and grab the villain, but he was just out of his range. His arms and legs already shifted as he clung to the wall next to the javelin, and then he yanked the weapon out and leaped at the villain, but was transported somewhere else as a portal opened in front of the villain. There were many cries for Izuku's name, but he was gone. "What did you do to him?" 13 yelled. "You should all be more worried about yourself. Now suffer." Purple mist ejected out of the villain, and students began to disappear into it. Izuku landed hard on the concrete with his javelin sunk halfway down into the ground. He whipped his head around and saw he was somewhere else alone. He noticed the many villains crowding around Izuku with smirks. He stood up with his usual smile gone and smelled the air. He was still inside the USJ, but his classmates had been scattered just like he was. He could smell anger and fear. "Looks like we only got one. How boring. We'll try to make it last." One villain laughed, and the rest followed in his stead. Only one didn't laugh and backed away. "What's wrong with you?" his companion asked. The man with the wolf's appearance kept his head down and backed away. He whimpered and whined as they heard flesh tearing and bones breaking. Everyone turned their attention back to the boy, and a beast stood in its place. His arms grew enough for him to use them to run on all fours with claws at the ends of his fingers, and his knuckles exposed the silver metal underneath. His paws grew thicker, and his claws extended. The back of his clothes opened, and a long bony tail extended with a sharp blade at the end. His face shifted, lips were pulled back, and teeth grew sharp and interlocked. Bone plating grew to cover his nose and around his eyes. Another set of eyes opened under his normal eyes, and they swiveled around to take everyone in. Many of the villains stepped back in horror at what they witnessed, but what drove the point home was the voice. 10 different voices layered over each other as the no longer boy spoke. "Heroes take out villains. I am learning to be a hero, and you are villains." Izuku was the first to attack. They tried to fight back, but Izuku was too fast. The first to go down was a man with nondescript features. His eyes widened as he tried to light his hands on fire, but his face was already enveloped by Izuku's hands. He was lifted and smashed down, and then thrown at his next victim. The next one was knocked down, and Izuku backhanded him as he flew over them to the next one. His tail lashed out and grabbed a man by the leg, and was used to hit another with bone-breaking force. Screams of terror filled the area as Izuku took one after another villain down. The last one standing was a man with a wolf head and fur around his body. Izuku silently prowled up to the shivering villain. He could smell the absolute fear radiating off of him. The man didn't speak as he kept his eyes clenched shut and his head down. Izuku put a clawed hand on his shoulder, and the man whimpered. He was pushed down gently, and the wolf man sat down without resistance. When he finally opened his eyes, all he saw were bodies around him. He did not move until someone told him to. Izuku ran out of the area he was in with multiple abandoned buildings scattered around him. He didn't smell anyone else in the area and decided to leave to find his friends. He sped up, when he smelled blood from the exit of the area he was in. Izuku extended a tendril with an eye, and then opened the door to see what was happening outside. Izuku wasn't sure if it was good or not. After all, this is the first time he is seeing a hero fighting villains. Aizawa was pinned under a large villain with dead eyes and an exposed brain. He could see the villain who transported him away next to the villain with hands around his body. Izuku could see Mina, Shinso, and Todoroki at the edge of the water, watching like he was. Behind them was the boat frozen, and so was the water making a path near the shore. He slammed the door open and sprinted as fast as he could when the hand villain rushed to his friends. Todoroki launched an ice attack and the big villain shielded the other one. The big one slammed his hand on the ice, and it shattered with no effort. Mina was being pulled back by a pale Shinso, and Todoroki tried to freeze the monster more, but it wasn't enough. Izuku leapt with all his might at the big villain and speared his tail through its chest while clawing at its neck and shoulders. Vital fluid sprayed everywhere as the villain thrashed to grab whatever was on his back. Finally, the villain grabbed Izuku's arm and was thrown off it. Izuku rolled to a stop, and his broken arm from where he was grabbed shifted and repaired itself. "Oh, you look scary. Is this the one who hurt you, Kurogiri?" "I believe so." Izuku ignored them in favor to watch the large villain with a shredded back and neck healed. The hole in its chest closed, and all that was left was its vital fluid. Izuku paced around the villain to watch how it reacts, but it showed nothing. "What do you like, my Nomo? Want to play some more?" "Nomo." Izuku dodged the fist that embedded itself in the ground where he was just at. He didn't stop moving around the Nomu until he was able to slice its hand off with his tail. It didn't react for a moment. The hand grew back, and it turned to Izuku and screeched. Izuku yelled back and charged. He ran under the fist that should have taken his head off, and under its legs. He sliced one off at the knee and cut the Achilles tendon on the other. It collapsed under the missing leg, and Izuku began to claw its back out again. Its leg healed, and the Nomu rolled to its feet and grabbed the tail that was whipping around and slicing at the Nomu where it could. He was pulled off its back, but Izuku held on and tore away chunks of flesh, and he was slammed down. The Nomu was about to stomp his prone form when an explosion knocked the Nomu to the side. Kaken blasted it over and over until Izuku was able to get on his feet. Izuku watched the Nomu try to swat Kaken down with a completely healed body. Izuku growled in frustration and racked his head for a plan. He tried to take its head off, but it heals faster around his neck than anywhere else. He stared at his claws and made them shift into thicker drill tips. Izuku prowled around the Nomu as he tried to fight Kaken, but it was clear the Nomu had no damage to its body. That's where Izuku's experiment will come in. The Nomu turned its back to Izuku, and he pounced. Instead of slashing, Izuku stabbed his 5 fingers deep into the Nomu's neck. He was backhanded away, and his fingers detached and dug deeper into the flesh of the Nomu. They wriggled around and began to sink deep into the neck. The Nomu clawed at its neck, but the parasites Izuku created were already doing their job. The monster clawed its neck and chunks of flesh were torn out, but its quirk worked against it and healed faster than it could reach the burrowing creatures Izuku injected. First, the Nomu's arm began to spasm, and then it collapsed to one knee as he couldn't move it anymore. It fell and spasm racked its body. It screeched in pain, and Izuku prowled around his prey. Kaken watched the Nomu fail to get up again and fall to the ground face up. He was confused and slightly horrified at what his old friend did and how he looks. Izuku walked up to the prone Nomu and observed it. He spotted its knees and took hold of one of its knee braces. He ripped it off and stared at his new trophy. Vital fluid dripped from where it was attached to its flesh, but Izuku didn't care. He turned to the 2 remaining villains as he had a tendril hold on to his prize. He began to prowl on all 4s around the 2 as the doors banged open at the top of the stairs, and All Might was there. Izuku made another javelin and threw it at the Kurogiri to stop him from getting away, but a portal opened between them, and the javelin punched through Izuku's stomach instead. He yelled in pain and began to absorb the javelin without pulling it out. He turned back to the 2, and they were already gone. Kaken ran up to Izuku to make sure he was all right. He cursed once he saw Izuku was as healthy as he could be. He slapped the back of Izuku's head. "Don't make me worry like that, damn it." He huffed out and held his hand where he slapped Izuku. "I'm fine. See." Izuku's modified voice spooked Kaken, but he checked over his friend. He nodded and pointed at the prone Nomo. What in the hell did you do to that thing? I would like to know as well. All Might approached the two as more heroes poured in and pulled students out of the USJ. Is it dead? Izuku shifted back to normal and was about to speak when Namiri brought him into a crushing hug. Izuku, are you all right? She pulled him out of her bosom and looked him over. I'm all right, Nem. He beamed up at her as she pulled him into another hug. Good, that's good to hear. She pulled back and was called over by Present Mike. I'll see you later, okay? And then she ran off. All Might cleared his throat and motioned to the Nomo. Right. Well, since parasites can't live in me without being eaten like anything else, I decided to research how they worked, and I guess I succeeded. He shrugged, and one tendril stabbed the prone Nomu, and the wound healed. Yep, I succeeded. The thing didn't stop healing, and you did what? Paralyzed it with parasites? Kakin asked with a shiver. Yep, I had the parasites spread through the nervous system and shut it down. I figured since this thing can't die. He shrugged. You keep saying thing, why? All Might asked the two of them. It smells weird, like almost dead, but not exactly. Also, it never said anything other than screeching, even now. His tendril stabbed it again, and All Might gave him a reproachful look. Stop stabbing the thing. Kakin punched Izuku's arm and winced in pain. The hell is wrong with your arm? Izuku's arm opened and exposed muscles and bone. It's fine, see? All right, go on and get checked out by the medics. All Might sighed and waved them away. Izuku and Kakin made their way up the stairs and out of the smashed-in doors. There were paramedics and police in the immediate area. Izuku was thinking if this was a normal amount of police and others, but was knocked out of his thoughts by a pink girl latching around him. Izuku, you're all right. She sobbed. She was a bit dirty from the day's events, but didn't have any major injuries. Izuku hugged her back and beamed a smile. Yep, I can heal myself pretty well. You okay? Kakin gave Izuku a look he couldn't read and headed off. He'll talk to him later. Shinso, Jairu, and Shoji crowded around Izuku and a still clinging Mina. You all look okay. What about everyone else? The teachers? They took Aizawa and 13 to the hospital for healing, but the rest of us are all right. Bumps and bruises were the worst. Are you okay? I watched most of that fight, and it wasn't pretty. Shinso looked worriedly at his friend. Yep, it was hard, but I won. Izuku showed off his new prize. Yeah, we saw? Is that what he looked like when you saw him? Jairu asked Shinso. The tale was new, but yes. That was what I saw in the dark woods one day, and now he is my friend. Izuku beamed at Shinso's words. Izuku, what did you do to the Nomo? Shoji spoke. I made parasites that burrow into its neck and find the nervous system to shut it down. It was really hard to research what I was looking for, but it worked out great. They were all silent for a moment, and then Shinso said, That is horrifying. He said in a steady voice. Come on, let's get you checked out by the medics. Mina tugged Izuku along after she wiped her tears away. His classmates greeted him and were glad. He was healthy as he passed near them. Izuku was likewise relieved that they were healthy. Izuku saw the detective from before and waved at him with a smile. He gave Izuku a wry smile with a nod and kept working. Izuku sat on the bumper of an ambulance, and they began to check him over. He lost interest soon after and watched as villains were filed out with UA staff watching like a hawk. He saw the wolf man who didn't fight back, and Izuku stared at him as he walked by. The man stiffened up and hunched his shoulders as he passes by. Once done, Izuku boarded the bus again, and they made their way back to the main campus for a quick interview, and they can head home. Izuku looked around and saw most people were tired. Was that normal? Izuku asked no one in particular and nodded to the USJ now in the distance. No, I think this was the first time someone organized and attacked UA like this, Jairu said. Many nodded their agreement that this was abnormal. And that Nomu was new? Never hear of one before. Shinso shook his head. Izuku? Kakin drew his attention and asked, What the hell is that? He pointed at the metal kneecap of the Nomo. Izuku pulled it over to his hand and showed it off proudly. My trophy. You should not take objects that belong to the villains. It could prove useful for the heroes to find out where they came from. Ida chopped his arm down. It had another. This one is mine. He said seriously and brought the metal frame to his chest. Leave him be. He lives here anyways. If the heroes want to see it, then they will ask him for it. Jairu defended Izuku's actions. Still, he should not have taken it. All right, take it from him, Shinso said. What? Ida stopped and then looked to Izuku, whose tendrils were beginning to extend from his shoulders and waved lazily. He remembered seeing his fight against the Nomu and sat back down. It had another, correct. His classmates split off and got changed, and then returned to the classroom for the interview. Izuku's turn came, and he explained to the detective what he knew and what happened to him after throwing the javelin at Kurojiri. He didn't offer much since he was distracted by the fight against the Nomu. He went on to explain what he did to the Nomu. These parasites, are they lethal? Does it matter? Izuku tilted his head in confusion. The Nomu can't die. I've tried, and it can heal very fast. The detective nodded as he wrote what he said. Can you remove them? I think so, but then wouldn't it try to fight again? Then what? I'll bring it up to the others. That's all I have for you. Thank you for being cooperative. He bowed slightly at Izuku. Izuku beamed and gave a wave while heading to the exit. Nice to see you again. He left and made his way to his woods. He was hungry, and maybe a nap will do him good. Plus, he had a trophy to clean up. Good thing he didn't have homework that night. Izuku returned to his den after he changed out of his school uniform. He cleaned his trophy and placed it neatly next to the wolf's skull. He grinned at his display, and his stomach grumbled for food. He had used his quirk a lot that day and healed more than usual. So, he went on a hunt for his meal. Izuku was in his furs asleep when he heard a phone ringing. He shot to full alert and remembered that he had a phone and it was ringing. He extended a tendril and picked it up to see Mina was calling him. He looked outside, and it was still dark. With some confusion and worry, he poked the green button. Her face showed up on his screen, and it looked like she had been crying. Mina, are you hurt? Hold on, I can track your scent. Izuku's second set of eyes opened, and bone cracked and flesh tore as he prepared to sprint. No, I'm fine. I just had a nightmare. I wanted to talk to someone. Mina almost jumped out of her sheets in a panic. Izuku paused, and his body shifted again. Oh, okay. Was it because of the USJ? He sat down on his furs. Yeah, it was about when you jumped on that thing. You were too late, and I died with Shinso and Todoroki. More tears cropped up from her black and golden eyes as she tried to rub them away. Izuku was quiet for a moment. Is there something I can do to help? He wasn't sure what to do, so he asked for clarification like Nem taught him. She wiped her face again and said, Do you have nightmares? I did when I was younger. I remember them faintly about me being alone, reliving Inko leaving me, or starving away while wolves found me. I don't anymore. I don't dream about anything. He looked into the distance, distracted. Do you want to talk about Inko? Izuku tilted his head in confusion. We are talking about her. Mina giggled at seeing Izuku act like a puppy. No, do you want to talk about your feelings about her? Izuku was quiet for a moment in thought. When I first thought about her seriously again, it was with Kaken. He said Inko was like a second mother to him. And I felt so angry at hearing that. Not at him. It wasn't his fault. It was Inko's. Izuku growled the name. She left me to die and took care of my friend instead. I wanted what Kaken had, but I didn't. I was alone and fought to live because of her. When I first saw her at court, the same anger came, but it was mixed with sadness. I'm not sure why I felt sad. Izuku felt wet on his face and felt his face with his hand. Tears. He stared at his hand and began to wipe them away like Mina did a minute ago. He remembered he was talking to her about all this and looked at the screen to see her crying again. It's okay, Izuku. You are not alone anymore. You have Shinso, Namiri, and me. Okay. She gave him a wobbly smile. Izuku gave her a grateful smile. Thanks, Mina. He paused and thought of what to say next. What do you like to do when you have free time? He asked. Mina giggled and wiped the remaining tears. She went on to tell Izuku about dancing and how she likes a game in an arcade that is about dancing. He asked about the arcade, and she explained it to him while laying down to continue taking. Izuku got comfortable in his furs and listened to her talk. But by bit, Mina began to take longer pauses and then stopped talking. Soft snoring was the only thing he heard through her end. Izuku stared awkwardly at his phone with a video call of a sleeping classmate. He wasn't sure what to do at this point and considered waking her up, but Mina looked content to sleep. Izuku fumbled around, and the screen flashed. He froze and tried to figure out what he had just done. Then he continued to try to end the call, and finally did. The screen said, "Call ended," and he nodded in satisfaction. "I'm a pro," he said, and then laughed to himself. He tossed the phone back on his shelf and rolled over to sleep again, happy to be able to help his friend fall asleep. The next day, he arose at the break of dawn like always. He found a small meal and was called by Nim on his phone to come to the main building to talk. He shoved the rest of the badger in his mouth and swallowed it whole as his body tore it into smaller pieces to digest them quicker. He ran to the door, and Nim was waiting there with a smile. "Hey, Nim." Izuku smiled up at her. She brought him into a hug and looked down at him. "I'm glad you're okay. I'm sorry I didn't get to check up on you after yesterday." "It's okay, were you busy?" "It's a mess. This was the first time anyone has attacked UA, and people expect us to be a safe learning environment for their children. When something like the USJ happens, they lose trust, and it looks bad on UA." She explained as she motioned to the door and walked through. "With him." Izuku hummed. "That makes sense. What did you want to talk about?" She smiled down at him again. "Mainly to see how you were after yesterday. You're not scared at seeing your first real fight?" She knew he had experience with surviving in the wild, but this was a bit different. "I kinda liked the fighting. It was exciting, but I was more worried about everyone else. I was fine on my own." Nim laughed at that. "You are becoming a battle junkie. Is that good?" "It sounds good." She ruffled his messy hair and plucked a tree leaf out. "It's not bad or good, just how you are." "What about Aizawa and 13? They continued to walk down the halls of UA. Izuku wasn't sure where to. She sighed. "They'll be fine. They were hurt pretty badly, but they will recover soon enough." "That's good. Where are we going?" She chucked, self-deprecating. "We forgot to get you checked out by a doctor when we took you in. I doubt you've had any shots or a physical in a long time." "Shots? For what? I can do everything myself. I don't get sick." He complained like a child. Namuri raised an eyebrow at his response. "You still need to be checked out. I'm sure it'll be fine." She opened the door that said nurse's office. Izuku met eyes with the old lady who hit him during the entrance exam. He turned to Nim. "I don't like her." Namuri furrowed her brow at that and looked between him and Recovery Girl. "Why?" "She hit me after the entrance exam and called me foolish. I don't like her." He said stubbornly. "I apologize for that. It's a habit." Recovery Girl said. Izuku narrowed his eyes at her. "Are you apologizing because you hit me or for me to get over it?" Just because Izuku was naive at many things in the world he returned to doesn't mean he's an idiot. Recovery Girl shifted with her cane. "To be honest, a bit of both." She shrugged. "I've seen too many reckless youths get permanently injured doing what you did at the exam. If that shrapnel hit somewhere more vital." Then she left the rest unsaid. "I still don't like you." Izuku walked into the office for Nim's benefit. Recovery Girl shook her head and looked at Namuri, who gave her a look. She got the message, and the elderly hero shoved everything in her mind aside. "I was told you can heal yourself at the cellular level. That includes any infections and anything foreign to your body." Izuku nodded. "You want an example?" A tendril extended from his arm with a blade poised to slash at his arm. No, don't do that. I just wanted to confirm what I've been told." She huffed. "Have you had any recent infections of any sort?" Izuku shrugged. "A few ticks tried to latch onto me, but I ate them. Nothing survives on me without me letting it." She paused. "How did you eat them?" "They lashed onto my leg, but I sucked them in, I guess." "Oh, like one of those Venus fly traps, but they get pulled under instead of closing over. From there, I break them down for anything useful." "Do you taste them?" Nim asked from a chair in the corner. She looked just a bit disgusted at the image of ticks being devoured. "Nope," he said cheerily to her. "All right then, I am going to need a vital fluid sample. And I guess the physical is not necessary since your body is unique to you. After that, all the vaccines you missed over the years." Recovery Girl held a needle for drawing vital fluid. Izuku let her grab his arm and stick the needle into his vein after she cleaned the surface skin with a wipe. Once she got enough vital fluid, she removed the needle and the hole healed. She moved the skin around the previous puncture to examine. She set the blood aside and picked up a tray of syringes filled with something Izuku didn't trust. Namuri saw his curled lip when he saw the syringes and chuckled. "The faster you are done, the faster you are out of here." Izuku grumbled, but held still as Recovery Girl stuck syringe after syringe into both arms and sometimes thigh. He felt the liquid enter his body and considered containing it and ejecting it later. Instead of doing that, he grumbled and circulated the vaccines through his body faster and integrated them into his body. The only pleasure he got from the whole experience was when Recovery Girl struggled with sticking the needle into his compressed muscles. That should be the last one for a while now. Recovery Girl capped the needle she just pulled out of his arm and set it with the others. "You may feel odd as they settle into your body. Come to me if anything feels wrong. Izuku stood up and turned to the old lady. I still don't like you. That's fine, boy, but I still need to make sure you are up to date with your shots. Now, shoo. She waved at him to leave. Izuku growled like an animal and left in a huff. Namuri followed behind and waited to speak. Why don't you like her so much? Because she hit me and called me foolish. He crossed his arms. What about when training? Do you dislike the people who hit you? She worried about the behavior. No, that's different. That's like pups fighting each other to practice for them to hunt. She just hit me for no reason. And the villains that attacked you? I don't like them either, except that one guy. He was all right. He nodded to himself. Which one? The wolf-looking one. He didn't fight. He sat when I pushed him down, and he stayed there. Namuri remembered hearing about many villains hurt badly around one sitting and shaking wolf villain. When they arrested him, he came without protest. She paused and debated whether to ask something, but pushed forward. Did Inko hit you? Izuku stopped and looked at her in surprise. I don't think so. Why? Oh, I just thought that was why you don't like to be hit. She felt stupid now. Oh no, I just don't like to get hit for no reason, he said simply. She huffed a laugh and ruffled his hair. He leaned into her touch and smiled at the warmth he felt from her. I'm getting peckish. Let's go get something to eat, yeah? Izuku beamed at her and followed her to the parking lot to find something to eat. They got into a large car and put on music Izuku enjoyed. They found a restaurant that made sandwiches Namuri thought Izuku might enjoy, and she was right. Izuku devoured his sandwich and looked sad at his empty wrapper once he finished. She laughed at his expression and got another for him as she finished hers. They picked up another order she placed for the rest of the staff back at UA and headed back. Izuku helped Namuri distribute sandwiches to the working staff, and they gave him grateful smiles in return. When he finished, Izuku sat on Aizawa's couch in the teacher's lounge and yawned. He stretched like a cat and then rolled under the couch for a nap. That has to be bad for his back, right? Present Mike said as they stared at Izuku rolled up under the couch and snoring softly. He can shift his whole body however he wants. He'll be fine. Vlad King said, Do you think he got that habit from Aizawa? Or did he do that before coming here? Cementos asked. Namuri took a few more pictures with her phone with a smile. I wouldn't be surprised if he took naps around the woods whenever he felt like it. The long weekend passed without much fanfare for Izuku. He talked with his friends on his phone. Izuku talked to Shoji about helping him with his quirk. The big teen began to work on shifting his arms into different non-human organs after reading what Izuku had recommended to him. There were some trials and errors, but he managed to make ears similar to an owl. Monday came and Izuku walked into class and was greeted by Mina first. Hey, Izuku. He gave her a beaming smile. Hey, Amina. Kaken butted in without any shame. Izuku, Mom wants you to come over already. All right. When so I can tell Nam. He agreed without any hesitation. He paused and sent a message on his phone. He read a reply and shoved it back into his pocket. She wants you to come after school. Great. It'll be nice to see your house again. He shoved the thought that his old home was near his to the back of his mind. Everyone should be seated. Classes will begin momentarily. Ida said to everyone. Izuku sat in front of Shinso and greeted him happily. He returned the greeting with a lazy smile. Shinso was glad to see his friend well after the USJ. Time ticked by, and everyone began to talk in their seats about who will be their substitute teacher. It's still Aizawa. He's coming. Izuku said the asked question. Shiro turned to him. Did the other teachers tell you? He shook his head. I can smell him coming. He's still hurt though. How hurt is hurt? Jiro asked. Izuku shrugged. I don't know. I haven't seen him since the USJ. But he's behind the door now. He pointed at the door, and it swung open to a bandaged Aizawa. The class shouted their worry about their teacher's condition. I'm perfectly fine to teach. But you all have more ahead of you. He paused, and everyone tensed. Izuku sniffed the air, and everything seemed normal to him. The sports festival is coming. He finished dramatically. The class erupted in excitement as Izuku sat and nodded along even though he had no clue what that is. Is that why so close to the attack? Jiro asked. The security was tripled, and we don't want to lose face by pushing it back or canceling it altogether, Aizawa explained. Begin to prepare, that's all I have. Now, let me sleep. He gently lowered himself to the ground and rolled under his desk. Everyone chatted before the next class began, and Izuku tried to use his phone to look up what the sports festival was. He managed to find an app and typed in sports festival, but nothing happened. He pouted at his phone and tried again, but nothing happened. Cementos walked through the door, and he put his phone away with some annoyance at his phone not working. Lunch came and Izuku was dragged by Mina to the cafeteria again instead of going out hunting. He got his big sandwich from Lunch Rush and sat with his friends. As soon as everyone sat down, he asked, "What's the sports festival?" I tried to look it up on my phone, but it didn't work. He pulled his phone out and showed them what he had done. Everyone looked at the screen, and it showed the sports festival typed in the notes application. Mina burst into giggles, and Shinso snorted a laugh. Jiru slapped Mina's arms. "Leave him be, he doesn't know." I'm sorry. It's just funny is all. I'm not laughing at you, Zuko. It's just funny to see something like this." Mina calmed down and cleared her throat. The sports festival is like a big event for all of the UA students to play types of games to show off our quirks and abilities for attention. For the people in the support course, they want to show off their inventions. Hero course, so pro heroes send us internships to work for them, and then maybe work for them when we graduate. General education, so they might move into a hero course if they get far enough. And the business course, I'm not sure. Practice maybe? She shrugged as popped the tab on her soda pop took a sip. Yep, that's the gist of it. Shinso nodded along. Games. That sounds fun. Izuku had stars in his eyes, but refocused on what Mina had just drunk. What's that? He pointed at the can of soda. Mina looked at what he pointed at and grinned. It's a drink, try it. She slid the can to him. She got a disapproving look from Shoji, but quickly switched attention to Izuku. Shinso looked on eagerly at his friend's reaction. Jiru also looked on without stopping anything, and Mina slipped her phone out to video the whole thing. Izuku picked the can up and looked inside curiously. He took a sip and cringed away at the feeling of the fizzing in his mouth. Your water is spicy. He stuck his tongue out and shook his head. It's so sweet, but tasty. Shinso gave a laugh that more closely resembled a cat coughing up a hairball. Spicy water. He got some looks from other tables, but he never noticed. Mina put away her phone with a grin. She patted Izuku next to her on the shoulder. I'm sorry, but I couldn't resist seeing your reaction to something like this. So mean. Izuku pouted slightly, but knew his friends were just having fun. Shoji and Jiru both smiled at his reaction, but kept themselves in check. Mina picked up Izuku's phone and found the camera app. Here, you need one of these. Smile. She leaned on Izuku and took a selfie with everyone in their little group in the frame. She took it, and it came out perfectly. She smiled, sent it to all his contacts, and then set it as his lock screen. There. She gave it back to him to see. Izuku looked at the picture on his phone and beamed. Neat. I like this. He examined the picture with joy. Mina smiled at his infectious smile and took a sip of her soda. She set it down and caught Jiru's eye. She gave Mina a smirk and her eyes flashed down at the can and back to her. Mina furrowed her brow and the realization came to her. An indirect kiss. She looked to the others to see if they saw, and both Shinso and Shoji gave her knowing smiles. She blushed more than before as Izuku continued to be oblivious to the situation with his new background on his phone. Izuku packed his laptop away and stretched his back. He turned to Kaken, who just finished packing his things to go home for the day. All right, let's go. Izuku led the way to the door. He opened it, and a crowd stood behind it. Izuku stared at everyone. Hello. Is this normal, Kaken? He greeted them all in a group and asked his old friend. They are here to scout the competition in the sports festival. Some might want to join the hero course if they didn't manage the first time around. He explained. Oh, that makes sense. Well, I'm Izuku. Nice to meet all of you. He beamed at them all. He sniffed the air and caught a familiar blonde hair. Monoma, you passed the exam. That's great. Ah, hello, Izuku. Nice to see you again. I thank you for being so understanding in the exam. It's a shame you are in class 1A and not in mine. Monoma greeted his acquaintance. Hey, I was thinking if you copied my quirk and changed some things in your body, would they stay after the time limit wore off? Because if it stayed, you could do so many things. He got close to Monoma's bubble without any hesitation as everyone watched the odd boy. That does sound intriguing, like what? Monoma was a bit of a quirk nerd and was very interested in what Izuku was talking about. Like, Izuku raised his hand to show his skeletal structure covered in steel, but Shinso stopped him. Let's not traumatize the whole first year with your... He waved his hand at Izuku's whole body. Abilities. Izuku, let's go already. Kaken called from down the hall. Coming, Kaken. See you later, Monoma. Bye, Shinso. Bye, Mina. He said his farewells. Later, Zuku, Mina said in return. He's weird. A gray-haired boy next to Monoma said. It's better to have him like this instead of how he was at the USJ. The remaining 1A class inside shivered at the memory of Izuku tearing apart the monster and taking his trophy from its prone body. What's that supposed to mean? Monoma asked Shinso. He saw how Izuku treated Shinso and could figure out that they were friends. No. You have to wait for the surprise like the rest of the class did. Shinso said. He was terrifying, Mina said. But he's great the rest of the time. Someone's biased. Jiru smirked at the retting of Mina's ears. Izuku got off the train with Kakin and followed him down the street. Izuku looked around with very faint memories as he walked. He stopped at a park and could remember he and Kakin played at it when they were young. The blonde noticed he had stopped and waited for him in silence. He shook himself out of his thoughts and caught up with the blonde. Kakin walked up to the door of a modest home, and Izuku remembered it faintly. He followed. We're here. Kakin called inside. Mitsuki ran around the corner and pushed Kakin out of the way to hug Izuku behind him. Oi, Izuku. I'm so glad you are okay. She almost had a heart attack when UA called to tell them about the USJ. Masaru patted his disgruntled son's shoulder. How was school? Back to normal. Sports festival is still on, he said to his father. Mitsuki pulled Izuku to the couches and sat him down. Come on, tell me how have you been? Izuku gently lowered himself to the couch. It creaked only slightly. You've gotten heavy, haven't you? She laughed. Masaru joined them and Kakin dropped his bag next to the couch and sat on the recliner. Yeah, I've gotten heavy from both my bones and muscles. He held his arm out, and a layer of muscle was exposed in the bone. The muscles looked like a solid mass of red cords, and the forearm bones were both covered in silver metal. Mitsuki and Masaru looked shocked at the display, but adjusted quickly. Mitsuki took his arm and examined the exposed arm. No vital fluid flowed out. I told you his quirk was freaky, Kakin said with a smirk. What is your quirk? Masaru was also peering inside Izuku's arm. I can manipulate my cells and make them do what I want. He extended tendrils to wave, for example. Does this hurt? Mitsuki asked, gesturing to the open arm. Nope, just feels odd is all. If you can control your cells, then you did this to your body? Why? Mitsuki gently tapped the metal on the bone. Izuku let them play with his arm and explain. Well, when I first discovered my quirk, I couldn't do much else than shift my legs, grow claws, or heal cuts and broken bones. So, I went to find a library because I remembered that they had books about everything. I wanted to do more with my quirk and make my body ideal. Ideal for what? Mitsuki let go of his arm, and it closed up. For hunting at first, now for being a hero. I met one and decided to try the exam out with Shinso. That's my friend that lives near the library I went to learn. He smiled at the memory. This Shinso never told their parents about you living in the woods? Masaru asked. Not my fault. I never said to keep it a secret, but I was fine where I was anyway. He shrugged. Mitsuki got quiet for a moment and asked, was it hard? Izuku's smile dropped a little. At first it was. I was lucky to find a stream with fish in it and a cave nearby. I got my quirk around 7, I think, and that made stuff easier. When I got used to my quirk, it became fun. He tried to smile again to reassure Mitsuki. It didn't quite work because she began to cry again and pulled Izuku into a hug. She didn't say anything but held him, and he gently returned the hug. I'm happy you're back. She pulled back and wiped her face. Tell me, why do I smell a perfume that doesn't belong to me? She got a wicked gleam in her eye. Izuku had noticed the odor that clung to some of the girls in his class and could tell Mina's from the others. He also knew when the smell stuck to him during the cafeteria. Oh, that's Mina's. We took a picture together. I'll show you. He pulled his phone out, and the screen lit up with the background of Mina's arm around him and leaning toward him with a beaming smile. Shinso had a lazy smile. Jiru smiled normally, and Shoji had a peace sign on one of his hands. He pointed at the pink girl next to him. That's her. Mitsuki took the phone and examined the girl that was very close to Izuku. Masaru peeked over her shoulder and had the same thought as his wife. Wow, Izuku, you work fast. And she's so pretty too. She tried to tease. Yeah, I've made 3 new friends and Kakin counts too, I guess. Of course I count. And yeah, she is pretty. He nodded along. Mitsuki turned full to him when her tease didn't work. What have you guys done together? She tried again. Mom. Kakin tried to say, but he was waved to quiet down. Lots of things. She taught me a few things when I didn't what they were. I even brought her to my den in the woods. She is really nice." He smiled innocently. Mitsuki's eyebrow almost touched her hairline. "Mom, he doesn't get it. He's been in the woods for 10 years. He isn't going to have the same thought process as anyone else would." Kaken explained. Izuku tilted his head in confusion. "She's trying to tease you about Mina," Masaru explained with a smile. "I still don't understand that, and Nim refuses to explain it to me." He grumbled. "Oh, you sweet innocent boy." Mitsuki ruffled his hair. "Will you tell me what it is to me?" Izuku's eyes shone. "Nope," and stood up. Izuku pouted and Mitsuki chuckled. "Come on, I've made dinner." Mitsuki went to the kitchen to serve everyone with Masaru, adding some last ingredients to the meal. Kaken set the table and Izuku stood awkwardly outside the kitchen. Kaken caught his eye and jerked his chin to help him with the plates. Izuku copied his friend on how to place them in front of each chair. Izuku saw the chairs and was very doubtful they will hold his weight. He'll deal with it 2 minutes into the future. Once done setting plates of food on the table, everyone dug in. Izuku was smart enough to wait for everyone to start eating first to copy their way of eating. After all, this will be his first time using utensils in 10 years. His plan for sitting on the very fragile chair was to extend tendrils to the ground to support his weight. Carapace-like material covered the tendrils, and he sat over the wooden chair. "So, tell us, Izuku. That Mina girl was awfully close to you. Katsuki, is she like that with everyone, or just him?" Mitsuki went back to trying to tease his nephew. Kaken snorted softly. "Only him. Every time they are close." He held nothing back. "Leave the boy be." Masaru tried, but was promptly ignored. He shook his head fondly at them. "Yep, I think it's what Nim told me about girls being weird. It doesn't make too much sense since Jiru, the other girl, isn't weird like Mina." Izuku mimicked them using the utensils, and was proud to say he was successful at it. Granted, he cheated by extending a tendril under his spoon for more control. "Nem, is that the other woman at court with you?" Mitsuki asked. "It's Midnight. He even took her family name," Kaken explained. "The 18-plus hero Midnight." She sounded doubtful about her watching over Izuku. "When the heroes arrived at the USJ, she went to check on him first even though I was right next to him. She didn't even notice me until she was sure Izuku was all right. He gave the lewd hero some support." Mitsuki made a thoughtful sound. "That's good to hear, but back to Mina." Kaken groaned, but was ignored as well. "What do you think of her?" Mitsuki leaned in. Izuku chewed and swallowed the chicken bone he had. "Think of her?" He was confused. Kaken raised a hand to stop his mother from asking something else. "He doesn't understand. What she is trying to ask is if you like her." "Of course I do. If I didn't, I wouldn't talk to her." He tilted his head as if it was obvious. "That's good to hear you got good friends around you." Masaru cut them off before Mitsuki could continue down their planned road. She shot him a small glare and turned back to her nephew. "What about UA? How do you like it there?" "It's okay. The woods there aren't as big as the other one, but it's nice. They gave me a room and everything, but I like to sleep in my den. The library has lots of different subjects I can find." He struggled to get a piece of meat and instead extended a tendril to the end of his spoon to snag it. They kept chatting for a while longer as they ate dinner. Izuku was happy to reconnect with his old family friends. He and Mitsuki didn't talk too much about their past since Inko was part of a lot of it, and she wanted to have a nice dinner. The time came, and it began to get dark. Mitsuki tried to get him to stay the night, but Izuku was fine to head back to his den. Kaken rode with him to the station where they get off for UA to make sure Izuku didn't get lost. It was very clear to see where to go from the train station. The gates of UA opened automatically for him, and he strolled in and headed to his furs. In the week that came, Izuku studied new things in the library, but he was beginning to run out of things he could mimic with his quirk. He knew the next step would be to try and mimic quirks, but he would have to see how the quirk of a person interacts with their body. For example, he couldn't mimic someone who breathes fire without knowing where the flammable gas came from and how it is made and ejected with the source of ignition. He could try, but putting a flammable gas inside his body sounds incredibly dangerous, even for him. Instead, he helped Shoji and Shinso with the upcoming sports festival. Shoji began to try different animal organs on his hands. He was very grateful for Izuku's help. Shinso, on the other hand, Izuku helped with his endurance and stamina. His quirk had some training, but there was only so much he could help with that. During one of the breaks from the exercise in the woods, Izuku asked Shinso, "You remember when I went to Kaken's house for dinner?" Shinso took a swig of water and nodded. "Suki, that's Kaken's mom, was asking a lot of questions about Mina when she found out we were friends. Is that normal? Shinso had a pretty good idea of what kind of questions. What kind of questions? He smiled. Like, what kinds of things she taught me, or if I like her. Does your mom ask you those kinds of questions? It's weird. He tilted his head in confusion. Shinso smiled again at being right. Well, when she was asking you about Mina, it was supposed to be in a romantic sense. She was trying to tease you about having a close friend that was a girl because that's how it usually is. He shrugged. Izuku paused and processed the answer. Romantic sense, like for a mate? Or wife? Shinso breathed in the water he had just drunk and was drowning in the middle of the woods. He coughed up some water and turned to his dear friend. Yes, something like that. For many, it's embarrassing to talk about having or getting a girlfriend, much less a wife. Izuku made an O with his mouth in realization. That makes some sense. Wait, why was Suki only talking about Mina and not Jairu? Because you talk about and to Mina more than Jairu, and that usually signifies your interest in her more than Jairu. Interested in her as a mate? Girlfriend. He corrected. Are you interested in her as a girlfriend? Izuku thought about it for a long moment. I'm not sure. I do like her and talking with her. Shinso hummed and thought about all those soap operas he watched with his mom. Okay, how about this? I want you to imagine Mina holding hands and kissing someone else. What do you feel? Izuku pictured it, and his chest felt cold at the image. He felt anger flare up and his fingers sharpened slightly. He looked in surprise at his hands. Oh, I didn't like that. Does that mean I want her as my mate? Girlfriend, he corrected again. Maybe, or maybe you are just protective. Okay, the same scenario, but it's Jairu instead of Mina. He stopped and pictured it, and he felt nothing similar to before. Nothing. He shook his head. Does that mean I should ask her to be my mate? Shinso shrugged. Are you interested in having a girlfriend? He emphasized the right word. Izuku hummed in deep thought, and Shinso spoke again. How about this? Keep things as they are now until after the sports festival so she doesn't get distracted by you asking her out. Ask her to be my mate after the festival, all right. He nodded and stood back up. Are you doing that on purpose? Shinso narrowed his eyes at his friend. Izuku responded by giving him a cheeky smile. I swear. He threw a rock at him, but Izuku was already gone with a laugh echoing between the trees. So he got back up for some training by trying to tag Izuku. His stamina has benefited greatly from this. The day of the festival was here, and Izuku was annoyed. Why is it so loud? Even shifting my ears to normal, it's loud. Jairu nodded along with him. That's how the festival is. It's very popular with everyone. The stands are sure to be full, and that doesn't even count for the people watching at home, and not just in Japan. Izuku took all that in. Wow, that's a lot of people watching. You're not nervous? Mina asked. No, why? Izuku tilted his head in question. He followed Shinso's instructions and acted normal with Mina, even if he kept having that weird feeling when he remembered imagining Mina with someone else. Before she could say why it's normal to be nervous about being watched by millions of people, Todoroki approached Izuku and Kaken, who was sitting near Izuku. In power, I believe I am stronger compared to the two of you, he said to the two old friends. Izuku interrupted Kaken just as he was going to speak. It's not fair to compare between you and me. You shoot ice, and I make my body do things. It's not the same. He moved his hands up and down in the scales motion. But you can compare to Kaken. He looked between the two and hummed in thought. He interrupted Todoroki just as he was going to speak. It's hard to tell. Kaken is good against one-on-one and less in a big area. You are the opposite. But you also have to remember he can shoot fire too, Shinso added. Izuku's neck snapped, literally, to Todoroki, and his eyes shone. Really? Show me. Show me. He almost bounced as his friends looked slightly panicked at the noise that came from his neck. Todoroki was completely thrown off kilter by the feral boy's behavior, but turned quickly when he was reminded of the other part of his quirk. I will never use fire. He almost hissed. Izuku came to a stop and observed Todoroki. Why? Does it hurt you? He was confused why someone wouldn't use their quirk. You wouldn't understand. He turned to leave. I don't. That's why I'm asking. Izuku only got more confused as Todoroki left. Mina patted his shoulder. Don't worry about it. Some people don't like their quirks or parts of them. Izuku pursed his lips in contemplation. I don't get it, but okay. He shrugged it off. Line up. The sports festival is beginning, Yaoruzo said to the room. Izuku forgot about what they were talking about and excitedly got up to begin the games they told him about. He was practically vibrating to everyone's amusement as they began to walk out into the sunlight. Shinso smiled behind his friend at his innocent behavior. Izuku was awed by the number of people around him. He spun around to see how many there were, and there were a lot. Shinso kept on gently guiding him forward to their seats as he kept slowing down. Izuku focused again forward when he sat down, with his patented carapace supports, and saw Nim strolling up to the stand. He waved at her, and she smiled at him. "Quiet down," she spoke into the microphone. "And welcome to this year's UA Sports Festival." The crowd cheered, and she raised her arm to quiet them down again. "Now before we start, this year's first-year student representatives' student oath. Izuku Kiyama." She pointed straight at him. "Oh, and oh, I forgot about that." Shinso cursed loudly while Mina was in between laughing and looking nervous about her friend. "Shinso, don't say bad words. Also, what's going on?" It was too late as Nim motioned him to come up to the stage. He did so and met her with a strained smile. She put her hand over the microphone and told Izuku, "It's something we do every year. You have to say a short speech and at the end say plus ultra, got it?" Izuku shrugged. He was placed in front of the microphone and spoke. "This is really exciting. This is the first time I've seen anything like this. I guess I have to say a speech? I don't know how to make one of those, so good luck with the games. Plus ultra." He beamed for everyone to see, and the crowd laughed and cheered with his enthusiasm. Such full of spirit. I love it. Now for the first round. An obstacle race. She explained what it was, and every first year sprung up to get in a good position for the race to begin. Izuku's smile never fell as he got up and followed his classmates. Shinso caught up to him and said, "Use your quirk and get to the finish line as fast as possible." Izuku bounced in excitement. Okay. When do we start?" Shinso smiled at his friend's behavior. "You'll hear it." He patted his shoulder and got some distance for himself. The people around him looked at Izuku weirdly at his childish behavior, but turned their attention to the front. Their attention was snapped back to Izuku when the flesh tore on his body and bones rearranged in his body. Some gasped in horror and backed away, and others just began to look sick. The brave few backed away finally when they heard a dozen giddy giggles of excitement from the beast before them. A bony tail extended from under his shirt with a spear at the end. His arms elongated and tore his sleeves as they bulged with muscles. Claws tipped his fingers, and his paws grew more aggressive. Izuku always liked to call his full transformation hunter form. Start. Izuku disappeared from where he was in the middle of the tunnel, and everyone near looked around in panic as they lost sight of him. They finally found him leaping from wall to reach the end of the tunnel. Many gasps of shock and horror followed Izuku as he laughed and leapt out of the tunnel in a full sprint. Many in the crowd stood at his appearance and speed. The only way they could tell it was the same student from the stage was the uniform and green hair. Izuku laughed in glee at being able to run at his full capability. He quickly passed everyone including Todoroki, who shot a wall of ice in front of him, but Izuku just busted through it. On all fours, he ran with the wind blowing his hair back and showing his interlocked teeth in a smile. His 4 eyes were wide as they took in his surroundings. His eyes caught on the robots ahead like in the entrance exam. He heard Present Mike saying they were part of the obstacles race, and he would need to get past them one way or another. Izuku decided to have some fun and tore the head of one without slowing down and then sliced another in half with his tail whipped to the side. With a spin, he launched the head of the robot in his hand into another, and it tore through its chest. He kept running and slicing at robots in his path. A row of 3-pointers launched rockets at him, but a carapace shield blocked them and then smashed into the first one, and a javelin punched through the other one. Nothing was safe in his path. Once done, he looked back and Todoroki was just reaching him with his classmates behind him. A path of destroyed robots led to Izuku, and he laughed in joy. He turned around and began to sprint to the row of blocking 0-pointers. He ran under one and destroyed its leg so it would collapse into the next one. Metal gave way under his claws, and its leg creaked under the damaged leg. It collapsed and tilted to the next 0-pointers and pushed it to collapse the next one in a domino effect. With that done, he sprinted to the next obstacle, which was a large pit with cables connected to pillars in between. He jumped without hesitation and swung from cable to cable. He jumped and clawed at the wall to climb up. His claws sunk into the rock without a problem, and he leapt up to the next obstacle. The minefield. Don't worry, they bark more than they bite. Present Mike yelled. What's a minefield? Izuku asked in a dozen voices, but no one answered him. He stepped on one immediately, and he was pushed back. Was that the minefield? No response. Izuku looked at the field before him and saw where the bulges were. He stepped on one, and it exploded. He nodded in satisfaction, and one leg split into two, and they narrowed into spider legs. His other leg followed, and he began to scurry across the field without detonation one. He heard an explosion and turned back to see Kaken rocketing toward him. Izuku, I'm taking first place. He tried to get past him, but a bony tail wrapped around him and threw him back. Izuku laughed. Nope. He crossed the finish right before Todoroki could turn him into an ice sculpture. He heard cheers, and Izuku shifted back to normal and beamed at the crowd who cheered even louder at his attitude. He had gotten first with Todoroki in second and Kaken in third. He came up to Izuku and punched him in the arm with a grumble. Good job, I'll beat you next time. Izuku beamed at his friend and shot back. Then you should be faster. Izuku sat down on the nice grass and lay back with one tendril with an eye watching the finish line for his friends. He turned to Kaken who sat next to him. Hey Kaken, what do I do after I ask someone to be my girlfriend? The blonde's eyebrows shot up. Who? Pinky? If that's Mina, then yep. Kaken huffed a laugh. You're supposed to take her out on a date first to see if you are compatible to be in a relationship. Then you ask her to be your girlfriend. Izuku hummed. Why can't I just ask her to be my girlfriend? I mean, you can, but that's after getting close. We're close. He cut himself off as Mina passed the finish line and plopped next to Izuku. Izuku sat up, and Mina leaned on his sturdy shoulder. I'm tired. Mina whined. Jairu and Shinso passed right next to each other and came over to them. I think you scared most of the first year shitless when they saw you. He laughed. You shouldn't say bad words, Izuku said and shrugged at what Shinso said about scaring the others. Kaken stared at Mina, who kept leaning on Izuku. She caught his raised eyebrow and she blushed at being caught, but didn't move as she stuck her tongue out at him. He made, I'm watching you signs at her, and motioned to Izuku who was oblivious to them. She blushed again when she looked at Izuku but determined, hooked her arm with his. Izuku smiled at Mina, who smiled back. Shinso, Jairu, and Kaken exchanged looks at that. Nem called the end of the first round just as the last spot was filled. Next round. We have the cavalry battle. She explained the rules, and Izuku listened attentively because he had no clue what a cavalry battle was. First place has 1 million points. I'm first place, Izuku said loudly in realization. I have all the points. He laughed, and many who didn't know Izuku backed away from him. Nem smiled at him and snapped her whip. Begin teaming up. You have 15 minutes. Izuku was left with his group of friends and frowned. We have too many people. The four exchanged looks, and Shoji raised his hand. I shall join another team. Good luck. They wished him good luck, and they huddled up. Izuku is going to be the horse, right? Because he weighs at least 500 pounds. Shinso said first. I want to be the front horse. Izuku began to get excited again. I can even carry you all too. I think Shinso should be the rider. We all have mid-range attacks, and he has his quirk. Izuku nodded along, and Shinso shrugged. They went with the plan with Shinso as a rider, Izuku as the lead horse, and Mina and Jairu on his sides. Izuku thought about what he should do and then nodded with a plan to shift. Carrying Shinso would be no issue for him, so he extended a set of tendrils to hold his legs and then shifted his arms to similarly bony whips. They moved around like snakes with tendrils at the ends for grabbing things more delicately. Many shivered when they saw him do that, but that was all he did. His legs shifted to his hunter form for more traction on the sandy floor. He opened his other set of eyes, and another on tendrils on his shoulder, which he ripped the sleeves off. Monoma laughed nervously at the thought of almost copying that quirk without knowing exactly what it did. Once everyone mounted their teammates, Midnight raised her whip to signal the start. Izuku moved from foot to foot in anticipation of getting started. Jairu just knew Izuku would run off without them, but all that was important was for Shinso to stay on Izuku and not to lose the headband with 1 million on it. Mina was just happy to be involved in the chaos Izuku would cause. And Shinso hoped Izuku would be careful and not give him whiplash for being a passenger on his shoulder. He absent-mindedly how Izuku got his hair so soft as he patted it. Start. Almost every team rushed for Izuku's, but many began to get second thoughts when the whip arms snapped the air and collided with the ground, leaving craters where they impacted. Izuku's eager smile sealed the deal for many, and they quickly turned around or attacked their neighbors. But not for Todoroki or Bakugo's team. Kaken flew off his team horse and rocketed toward Shinso. Izuku tried to grab him with one whip, but he saw it coming and blasted it away. Nice try. But Kaken forgot about the second one wrapping around his leg. Oh no. He tried to blast it, but he was whipped back to his team and crashed hard into them. Stop saying bad words. Izuku yelled at his friend and focused back on Todoroki as Izuku's team began to move away from them. Kaminari shocks people, right? I don't like the idea of that. Considering his bones were well conductors, Mina began to splash potent acid behind them to slow the team down. Todoroki froze the puddles, but they didn't stay frozen together with the strength of the acid. Jiraiya shot Sonic waved at them, and they backed off to target another team. Shinso kept his eyes open, but it seems that they were pretty well protected. They spend their time looping around the edge of the ring until someone tried to have a go at them. They were overwhelmed quickly by the range they had over the attacking team. One team with the front horse being a hairy boy charged at them with a large hand to slap them, but once Izuku focused on the hairy boy, he immediately turned around and ran with the confusion of his teammates. When they looked back at Izuku, he was beaming at them. The time limit was almost up when Todoroki's team began to charge at them again. Things got tricky when one of Izuku's whips got frozen in an iceberg and Todoroki's team charged at them only to stare in shock when Izuku's other whip grew a blade and sliced off the other stuck one to move freely. Some vital fluid spilled, but it healed quickly and grew out of the previously missing whip. Izuku smiled at their discomfort at seeing his limb being lopped off without a care, and many in the crowd looked shocked as well. Todoroki tried to charge again, but his teammates began to hesitate at getting close to Izuku and his feral smile. Ito whispered something to his teammates, and Izuku smiled even wider at Ito's stance and his teammates holding on to each other. Izuku did the same with grown tendrils and picked up Mina and Jiraiya to their very mild protest. Little heads up would be nice, Jiraiya said. Izuku, I didn't know you were into this stuff. Mina couldn't hold back a tease, but the look she got from Shinso and Jiraiya made her blush more than usual. Into what? Izuku asked innocently, but was prepared for when Ita's pipes shot blue flames and sped up faster than ever before. Izuku watched them coming and tracked them as Todoroki tried to reach for Shinso's headbands, but Izuku moved out of the way, just as fast as Ita was to their shock. While dodging, one of Izuku's whips tried to grab for Todoroki's headband, but flames singed his tendrils, and he backed away. Ow! Burns hurt, Izuku said, bringing his tendrils close to him to watch the flesh grow rapidly and the blackened flesh fall off. You okay, Izuku? Shinso asked. I'm fine, just a reflex of being burned is all. He set the two girls down and watched as Todoroki was dazed and his team disheartened by the failed pass. Ita more so than the others. They were distracted by Kaken blasting toward them again. Time ticked down and Izuku beamed at his friend trying to go at them again. Izuku's whips split again and again to grab the flying boy, but the end of the round came and Kaken let himself be caught by the dozen bony tendrils. He was set down and grumbled about losing again to Izuku. His team celebrated the win, and then Izuku went over to the iceberg with his whip frozen in it. He jumped onto it and broke the ice with one punch and retrieved his limb. It was absorbed back into his arm, but Izuku's stomach grumbled still. Nem called the winners for the round and called for the tournament to begin after lunch. Izuku joined with his friends to find food, with Shoji joining them. They found their dining area, and Izuku was the first to pile food onto his tray. He grabbed things he didn't know what they were, but Lunch Rush was more than happy to satisfy Izuku's hunger. He sat, and his friends joined him to eat. Once everyone began, Izuku devoured every morsel of food. Kaken tried to berate him for eating too quickly, but gave up when Izuku ignored him. Mina finished her plate and sneakily grabbed one of Izuku's skewed meat sticks. 2 more skewers were offered to her by tendrils, and Mina took them with a bashful smile. Izuku beamed at her and was happy to share with her. Shinso tried the same, but was gently slapped away by a tendril. Favoritism, Shinso grumbled and got up for more food. Izuku sighed in relief and yawned. He still had time for the next round and decided to take a nap. He looked around and found the window looking out to the stadium. Under the window was a bench. He stretched and lay on the concrete bench and promptly went to sleep. Like a cat, he soaked in the sun and snored softly until the next round came. Mina held her mouth as Izuku curled up on the bench. She discreetly snapped a picture with her phone. She heard someone clear their throat and turned to see Jiru watching her with obvious amusement. Mina's ears burned, but smiled anyway at her prize. Shinso shook his head at the pink girl, and Shoji watched with his eyes crinkled with a smile. Izuku shifted into his back, and his mouth opened wide in his sleep. Mina giggled as Izuku scratched his chest and snored loudly. Kaken watched his friend and thought of his mother. He took his phone and snapped a picture for his mother. He got odd looks, but he ignored them. Izuku woke with a large yawn that showed all his oddly perfect white teeth for a boy who hasn't been to a dentist in a decade. He could name-call all the students who passed to the tournament to gather up for the brackets. He was greeted by his friend group with smiles aimed at him. He smiled back and hopped up and stretched again. Those who passed joined them and headed down to the field like Nem told them to do. Congratulations to the third-round participants. She paused for the applause to die down. Now to see who will be fighting who. She aimed her whip at the large screen above her, and the names spun into place for each person. Izuku versus Shinso. Mina versus Sato. Jiru versus Kendo. Todoroki versus Shiro. Yaoyuruzo versus Shinshida. Ida versus Kaken. Kirishima versus Tetsu. Kaminari versus Shiozaki. Everyone stared up at the screen, and Shinso was the first to speak next to Izuku. Well, F me sideways. He threw his hands up in the air and turned his head to the heavens. Don't say bad words. Mina giggled at the two's interactions. So, this was the end of part 3 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.